Welcome to the Ricoh Insights podcast. Today we're going to delve into cybersecurity, and we're joined today with Toby Sleight, who is a cybersecurity expert. It's quite a bit mouthful to start with, but thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So going into a subject which is massively current, and everybody's obviously interested in it and talking about it, and we'd love to get your insights into sort of where we are today in 2025 around cybersecurity.
Okay, so if we look at the top threats for cybersecurity, the top of the list, very, very top of the list, and a long way at the top of the list is ransomware, right? We've been dealing with ransomware for a very long time now, but if we look at the stats for this year, we've seen a significant growth in cybersecurity threats, especially ransomware. And, in January, it was about 590 plus ransomware attacks. But then if we look at in January, then if we look in February nearly doubled that. So we're starting to see a massive growth. And if we look at what that looked like last year, it's over 120+% more ransomware attacks in the first 2 months already. And we've seen some significant ransomware attacks and big organizations that have been hit. So ransomware being, very much top of that list. And, we'll talk a little bit about how we can combat some of this. But, ransomware is pretty much predominant in there as one of the biggest threats, but also one of the biggest fears for organizations.
So you're saying exponentially it's growing.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a trend that the cybersecurity attackers are seeing that these companies are vulnerable.
Yep.
And obviously that's growing.
Absolutely, yeah. That's definitely what we're seeing globally. And, if we look at how often these things happen, I would say every 10 to 12 seconds we're seeing a ransomware attack globally.
Wow.
So it's crazy.
So what other areas are also a major concern?
So I think some of the other plays that we see is on that phishing, social engineering, going after a person initially, then going after an organization. Because if you can exploit the person, then you have a bigger play to exploit the organization. And we're seeing a lot of new trends around social engineering. Things like AI is being introduced. So it's very difficult to tell the difference. Another thing as well is the size of the companies that are getting hit. So traditionally, everybody wanted to go after the larger organization, but sometimes these smaller, medium-sized enterprises are also massively hit because their data is no less, critical to them. Which means if it's critical to them to a business, if it's stolen or encrypted, then they're going to pay the same kind of figures that the global enterprises will take. So we're seeing a big shift in the SME marketplace of being a massive focus for these threat actors. So yeah.
And then typically, what do they attack? What do they go after?
So it's always what's most vulnerable to the organization. So if you look at things like a ransomware attack, they're after the data. Things like supply chain, they're looking after stopping the supply chain, to stop them being able to manufacture, to stop them being able to transact. That's the kind of thing they're looking to do, is cause as much impact and as much disruption to a company as possible. And then they can exploit that, whether it's for a ransom or whether it's for competitive, or if it's maybe something to do with national infrastructure and things like that. So there's multiple ways and reasons why they're attacking these companies, but we're seeing a big shift into the SME space.
And then typically, what are they after?
Again, it's data. It's halting them. Stopping them from doing what they do as a daily basis. If it's national infrastructure, take an oil and gas company. If we can stop them from producing or stop them from distributing it, that's going to have an impact. So that's kind of what they're looking to do. It's maximum impact, whether it's data or whether it's a function of whatever that is. That's what they're looking to exploit.
And then typically as a trend being that the very large companies are attacked, now we're seeing small companies, so everybody's.
Yeah, nobody's safe, right? Again, if you look at the large corporates, doesn't matter what sector, large corporates, they're going to pay a lot of money to keep hold of their stuff, yeah? And also what we're also seeing is that large corporates are able to buy the best technologies, have the best people in office. They've got a bigger budget. The SME may not have the right people or the the skilled people or the top names in cybersecurity, and they might not be able to afford the best of the best of the best, and they have legacy infrastructure, but still their data or their function is also very, very critical. So that SME space is a big target for cyber criminals because of that reason.
And then what's the first steps that IT infrastructure will do to look at this?
So the first thing they need to understand is where they need to get to, so they will have an idea of, do they want to be the best in security? Do they want to be just, we're okay at it, or they want to progress? Yeah, it's all about evolving, right? But one of the things that we have to understand is, okay, but that's where I want to get to, but where am I now? And that's the critical piece is, this is where I am now. How do I get here? What's my journey? How do I get to that piece, and what do I need? But understanding what we are today is just as important of understanding where we want to get to. So that's the first piece of the puzzle, is understanding what we are today.
But surely they've already purchased many systems that are commercially available.
Of course, yeah.
Which will see or make them feel that they're protected. But is that the case?
No, because as everything evolves, your business evolves, cyber threats evolve. So technology needs to evolve as well. And, we don't need to be, bleeding edge in what we do around security as an organization. What we need to be is have a plan, of how we get to an innovative type state around security. We have to move. We have to evolve. If we don't, we're at risk. But also then comes into the play of compliances. All these compliances that used to be really focused on those large corporates are now being filtered down to the SME space. So that's another thing that we're seeing as well. So those are the kind of things that we need to understand. Is there compliances I need to maintain, and also, where are my gaps? Now, without understanding and having assessments on those sort of things, it's very difficult to know that.
So what typically would an IT manager do as a next step?
So first of all, he would look at what's his posture? What do I look like? So I would go out and get a assessment of some description, whether that be a pen test, whether that be an assessment on my whole security posture. Do I need to do things like NIST, DORA? If I do, how far away?
So what is? Could you want to go into what NIST or DORA is?
So for the people that don't know, Europe have put together a load of compliances that organisations that sit into certain brackets need to adhere to. So if we look at NIST, it's all around national infrastructure, oil, gas, education, anything, government, anything like that. They will sit in NIST too, and they have to tick a load of boxes, if you like, to become compliant. And then from a DORA perspective, that's all about finance.
Right.
So anybody that deals in the finance institutes, like insurances, banking sectors, anything like that, they have to comply to the DORA compliances as well. So, and this is now got to a point where if you don't comply, there are fines associated, like GDPR was, with data protection. These are now stipulating that you have to do this, and this. And if you don't have this in place, we will fine you. And the fines can be quite big.
So are there solutions out there that they can adopt to be able to get this compliancy?
Absolutely. And, there's not a one-stop shop, right? There isn't one place that I can go to and get my cybersecurity. Yeah, you have to layer cybersecurity, and you're always going to have to layer that cybersecurity, posture inside the organisation. But it's that starting block. It's understanding the first piece of the puzzle, the challenges, the reasons why we're here, and why what we've got to protect. That's the first thing that I would start to look at. But then we start to look at where your vulnerabilities are. So any organisation is going to be different. One organisation may be very good at things like patching, and the other organisation may be very bad at doing things like securing down our endpoints. So it all depends on the output of our assessments, and the understanding of where we are today is what then we can do and leverage technology and services in the security portfolio, if you like, that will be able to help close off those gaps in our organisation.
So just take a couple of steps back.
Yep.
What would typically happen under a ransomware attack? How does a company see it? What happens? How they're notified? How do they even know until at the very last minute that they've actually been hit?
Yeah. Okay. So many times, and is a high percentage, it's not the technology or the infrastructure that tells us there's a problem. It will be an end user.
Right.
So the end user will say to me, or say to admin and say, I can't access this folder, can't access this file, this share drive's not working. Yeah. But if you look at the time that could potentially take, you're talking maybe 2 hours before they've actually told somebody, or that IT are now aware. In a ransomware attack, 2 hours is critical. Those first few minutes are critical because it will spread to that computer, that machine, that machine, that machine, that machine. And before you know it, all of those machines are now encrypting all my data. So 2 hours is too long. So understanding is the first thing, but the second piece is, what am I going to do about it? Yeah. And as we know, it doesn't matter what technology you have. Yeah. There's all this technology out there. There's a plethora of organizations that will say, I can stop ransomware attacks, or I can prevent ransomware attacks, which is the key thing. Yeah. And yes, to a certain degree, but only in a subset. We need to look at the wider picture. We need to look at the organization and how we protect ourselves against a ransomware attack, and how we protect our critical IT infrastructure.
So, Ricoh can supply these products?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So, Ricoh's not known today for printing, for cybersecurity, is known for printing, right? And, we've been big in that business for a very long time. But if you actually dive deep inside the Ricoh brand, we do have a very successful cybersecurity practice in the UK, in the US, and in Europe, yeah, where we have technologies and services that we can offer to our customers and partners that have some very key technologies to be able to, one, protect ourselves, two, prevent, ransomware attacks, that kind of thing, but also understand the posture as well. We have a whole bunch of managed services. We have a whole bunch of things like penetration testing and assurance testing and all that kind of stuff that we can offer today to our customers and partners.
So that you're saying that we've got a total solution that we can go into a typical customer and then offer everything that they're probably looking for to secure or understand their situation.
Absolutely. I think the way to have this conversation with anybody, customer, partners, customers, whatever, is from the top down. We have to look at this from a strategic conversation. We can't go into an organization trying to sell them something, one thing. We have to go in there and have a conversation about an understanding. Again, from our perspective, we want to know their posture today, and where they want to get to. Once we've got that kind of information, then we can start looking at how we help them and how we help them adopt, one, technology, and two, services that we can deliver to fill those gaps. So the key thing here is top down, look from the outside in, and also understand their strategy, but also we can then talk a strategy conversation to them as well, and not just, you want to buy this, you want to buy that. It's a much nicer way to communicate. And also, not only that, you then build a rapport with the customer because you're there to help them. You're then seen as a friend to them, and not just another person trying to sell something. And that's kind of the consultative approach, the strategic approach that we should be taking when talking to customers.
And then with these solutions, we can offer it through a channel-based, process to the end user, or straight to the end user?
Again, it depends on the markets, but we can do so. In certain parts of Ricoh, we would go directly to the customer, but with things like Ricoh International, we will do through the channel market as well. So, the Middle East, the European and the African markets, we work very much through the channel. And what this also does as well is it helps our partners become not just a potential print partner. It now opens up. They have hundreds of thousands of customers, depending on the size of the organization, that they're buying technology or security, just not from them. Whereas now it opens it up. And I think one of the key things is everything that we're looking to bring to our partners and to our customers is all around innovation. There's no point in doing Me Too, because Me Too is something that, we get into that realm and I want to sell another firewall, just a different badge or whatever, you're getting into a very complex conversation, because how do we then differentiate ourselves against that? Whereas if we bring innovation and we show them that what we're doing actually does work, then there's a much more of an adoption. And again, it's being that consultative approach as well. So all of that really helps. But then put that then down to our partner. Yeah. So our business partners globally, how does that help them? Increase revenue for the partner, but also it keeps them sticky with inside their customers, because once you've started to have this kind of strategic conversation, you are then, as I said, a friend. You've got their best interests at heart, and that's what the customer needs. They need to feel that warm, fuzzy feeling when you go in and have a conversation. So it builds the partner as business as well.
And going back to this differentiator rather than me too.
Yeah.
Have you got any examples of a product that we do that with?
Absolutely. So with RC, with ransomware, it's clearly the only technology on the market that will contain a ransomware attack.
Right.
Yeah. Other than try and prevent it. That's very much, again, innovation. And with all the other technology that we're bringing in, there will be an element of innovation within a lot of that as well. So if we look at things like pen testing, pen testing is a me too, right? Oh. Lots of people do pen testing, but do a lot of people be able to go to that next step, which is that added value by doing the continual pen testing with the, with the scanning and the vulnerability scanning all built into a pen test? Not necessarily. So that's how we sort of differentiate ourselves against just being that Me Too type security provider.
And then what would be the next steps of an IT director? I mean, if he says, okay, I see that I could be vulnerable, who would he contact? What would he look to do in terms of bringing people in?
So again, if we look at it from a partner's perspective, speak to the partner, have that conversation with your customer. Where do you feel? Where do you sleep? How what keeps you awake at night? Have those kind of conversations, and then bring in us as an expert. We're here to help our partners and our end users. To be able to say, you should focus here. This is your assessment. This is the output of your assessments, and this is where you want to get to. And then we can build a strategy and a goal and a journey, if you like, on how we get from here to here. So, and that's the thing is we need to be talking at that kind of level with the end user, with the customers that have the problems, and that's really about it. But if we're here to help from our partners' perspective. Look at what we're doing today. We're working very closely with our partners, and we're opening up a wider conversation. And if we continue to do that, we're going to continue to grow the cybersecurity business for Ricoh, and also the cybersecurity business for our partner. But also, we're going to help secure the end user again. So that's my kind of take on it. Is that initial conversation is the most important piece.
And we talked a bit about the large enterprise companies, but also SMBs and SMBs. What would cost-wise? This must be huge.
Yeah, of course.
In terms of being downtime, but also in terms of installation a system. Roughly. Is there an ROI that we can easily calculate within?
With some technologies, there is. Go back to RC. There definitely is an ROI that can be proven. But when it comes to everything else, I don't know how you put a cost on your data. Do you know what I mean? So it's very difficult to say, my data is worth this amount of money. It more works out to be, can you afford to be down? Yeah. Can you go back to business continuity? Can you afford your business to halt because of a breach of some description? And the ideal there is then you can start to understand, well, if I'm down, how long does that work? How much is that going to cost me? So that's the calculation that they need to understand. But if we can then prove to them by looking at services or products that we have, that they don't have to take everything. They might already have this and this and this. We can add value to everything else, or we can start plugging holes for them. So yes, it's a very costly part of the business, and large organizations or even SMBs, they do have a security budget, and in some cases it's into the millions and millions of euros to secure their environments. So the budgets are available because organizations know that they're a risk. So that's something that we are tapping into is that budget, and we're able to not just, like I say, point solution, not sell them the Me Too stuff, is go in there and help them evolve their cybersecurity and embed cybersecurity into not just our DNA, not just our partner's DNA, but also the end user as well has to start thinking more about cybersecurity as part of their as a part of their everyday life.
And once a company's attacked, I mean, is it? I mean, to get back up to speed, is it easy or is it pretty critical?
Oh no, of course not. You know, the idea of especially, again, go back to ransomware. If you think about a ransomware attack, to recover from a ransomware attack, if you don't have certain elements, you know, without a backup, no good. You lose data. Yeah, even with a backup, and the backups get encrypted, you lose data, you lose time, you lose money. I've seen organisations that have been completely, you know, gone bankrupt because of ransomware attacks. So, you know, the ability to recover and recover quickly is the initial thought. You know, we've got to do it quickly. We've got to be back up and running quickly. But it's kind of the stepping stones that you can't take if you don't know what's happened. If I don't know where the encryption is, how do I recover? If I haven't got the data to recover it back, how do I recover? So there's a just from a ransomware perspective, there's challenges. But with everything else, there's also the same kind of challenges. We've got to know the problem before we can fix it. And if we don't know what the problem is or the scale of the problem, how do we fix it?
And the technology that these ransomware attackers are using, I mean, it's not just software. You could also have IoT.
Yeah, so
infrastructure attacks.
You know, they've got really sophisticated these days. And, you know, again, going back to what I was saying about, you know, social engineering using AI, you don't know who you're talking to. You don't know. You know, if I'm getting an email, how do I know that email isn't from a cyber criminal? You know, just from the naked eye, looking at an email, I think, oh, that looks like my insurance company. But is it? Is that coming from internal? Is it coming from external? We don't know that. And we can't allow our users to be that human firewall for an organization. Yeah. Then look at ransomware attacks. You know, there's so many different ways they can come in. It's not just a user interface. It could come through a light bulb or a whatever. Anything that holds an IP address can be an attack vector. Okay. So how do you protect against all of this? It's impossible. So it's inevitable the breach is going to happen. It's how do I limit the impact?
And then looking at the future, you spoke about AI there. Mm-hmm. I mean, how's that going to expand our sort of product portfolio? How's that going to help with securing against cyberware attacks?
And again, you have to look at AI as a bit of a battle because it's not just us trying to defend with AI. We're also trying to defend against AI because the cyber criminals are using it as well as an attack path. But we want to use it as a method to secure. So it's kind of an arms race at the moment around, you know, AI. But I see, yes, for sure, we see a lot of it coming more and more into play. You know, from a technology perspective, from a protection perspective, we'll see a lot more AI driven into it. But that's the flip side.
I suppose that machine learning, they've got to understand what's good and what's bad
exactly.
and what works with each organization.
We need to understand, you know, what everything looks like. So the AI tool that we use in RC is to do one job, but there's so many different elements that we can use AI for. And like I say, it's a balance. It's a real balance. And I think, you know, in some respects, the human touch is important, but sometimes can be, the reason why we got hit. So, you know, again, it's just a balance. It's just a balance of having the right amount against the right amount, if that makes any sense.
So going into the future, mm-hmm. I mean, we understand that even from last year, the problem's exponential. It's growing. Do you see it getting to a head, or do you see us containing it, or do you see it just constantly growing as an issue?
The issue here is that, you know, again, everything evolves. Ransomware will evolve. Fundamentally, it's there to do one thing, and that's stop you getting access to your data by encrypting, right? But I see the next 12 months, and moving past that, ransomware is not going to go away. It's too prevalent right now, you know, for it just to stop because of something. They will evolve around these things. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, we've got to find a better way of doing things. So we'll always be evolving. technology will always be evolving. The threats will always evolve as well.
So this has been massively insightful. Thank
very
you,
much.
Toby, for
My
joining us,
pleasure.
and I thank the listeners. And then I hope that moving forward, they can actually come to us and look at us as a provider for this type of technology that will help them grow as a business, but also help the end user secure their business.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and look forward to the next one.
Thank you.
Ricoh.